Now, at least 12 people are expected to appear in the Pretoria High Court this morning on various charges of contravening the Organised Crime Act in the nearly 2 billion rand looting at VBS Mutual Bank. To reflect on the VBS Mutual Bank timeline, I am now joined by one of the founding directors of VBS Mutual Bank, Mr. Madambi Muvhulawa. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Just reflecting on that timeline as well, chronologically speaking, it would be better to start off at its inception and the idea behind VBS Bank. If you can just remind us and take us into your privy as to why it was founded and what your intentions were initially.
Yeah. In summary, right from before 1979, in Venda, there were other banks, but in the form of agents. They were not really branches of the bank known in the country. So at that time, there was an organization called Bantu Investment Corporation, of which I was an employee thereof. And one of its services was to teach people to save. So they started a small thing called Sibasa Savings Bank, which was operating in one room where people were banking money, withdrawing money. So when Venda became independent, Chief Ravere, who was the Minister of Finance by then, and then realized that there is a gap of service required for the people of Venda, that they don't have really a place where they can save their money. And at the same time, they can make use of that money in the form of loans to build themselves houses and other development. So he approached PAM and asked them, what vehicle can he use to close that? And then PAM advised him that the best is to register a building society. And the PAM was also prepared to assist the Chief Ravere to register this building society. And then the capital required by then to register that building society was 10 million. And the Chief Ravere, because he was Minister of Finance, in control of the budget and the finance of the Venda government, then which was independent by then he took 10 million from the Venda Civil Servant Pension Fund, and then put in, as a starting capital for the building society. And that building society was named the Venda Building Society, abbreviated VBC. And then he appointed the board to run that. Amongst the board were members from to teach the board as to run a building society. I was amongst the people who was appointed in the board. So we carried on. And then people were invited to save money in different accounts, some in other accounts called IPS, Independence Period shares. Those are shares which stays for a long time and they give more interest, but they could be withdrawn on notice. So we carried on until the Building Society Act was abolished. Then we were to disappear with others. But instead of us disappeared, then we applied with the South African Reserve Bank to become a mutual bank. That's when Venda Building Society was no longer Venda Building Society, was then VBS Mutual Bank.
Yeah, and just in the interest of time as well, excuse me there to cut you in, Mr. Muvhulawa, we see how it was that there was good intention for it when it started off, but then we also see how it ultimately came crashing down and billions of rands were lost as well, and people lost their monies too.
I'm coming.
Where would you, just in the interest of time, if you could just let us know, what would you like to see happen moving forward? Right. We've got 12 people now who are going to be appearing in court.
And then later on, those IPS shares were then converted into shares with the approval by the government, because by then government was represented by PIC with members in the board. So people turn their IPS shares into shares. They became shareholders. And then that's where minority shareholders started. That's the people that I'm talking on my behalf. So I keep serving on the board. And then as a result of that, people buying shares into bank, then also Jambio came back into buying also shares. Jambio was a company formed by the king and some members, including Matodzi and the other friends. So they came in with the idea of pushing out the old board, which they managed. And I was the only one then who remained. And then, but others were pushed out. They brought in new members of their choice. And this is the team that worked then into the VBS in management, in board. They took majority. I was almost the only one of the old board.
At that point, when they did push out the old, at that point, when they pushed out the old and they brought in their new team, would you say that's when things started going wrong? When did it start going wrong?
At that time, things were going well in its size. You see, it was going well. So when this new team came in, they promised that they want to take the bank to a higher level. And they, by having new board members and new administrators, and then they started, bringing in new products, which we appreciated, thinking that they will take the bank to a higher level. Not knowing that they are creating a vehicle of taking money out of the bank. So it seemed it was showed working well because the auditors, PwC was the internal auditors who was monitoring the day-to-day operations and giving report which were satisfying to the board. And also KPMG was the external auditors who were responsible of seeing that these figures are correct and give proper report, which the board relied on. And also the Reserve Bank relied on that. So at the same time, they were recruiting the municipality to save money in the bank, which they did. But very unfortunately, along the way, the government decided that the municipality must withdraw that money immediately. And when they withdraw the money immediately, that left a hole in the bank. And that created now a problem of cash flow. That's why the bank put under curatorship because of cash flow. It didn't have a cash flow to run the bank. So they put the curator, who then we thought would revive the bank by collecting what remains and see if it can be structured for the bank to continue. But instead, the same curator then came up with the report that the bank could not be revived. It must be declared insolvent. And then a liquidator was appointed to liquidate the bank, which he did, liquidated the bank.
Yes, and that we did see. Unfortunately, we have run out of time at this point, so unfortunately, we cannot continue with that conversation. But thank you so much for also putting it into context and giving us that history into VBS Mutual Bank.